Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, we're going to go with a typical Oregon right now. Average, temperate, moderate, rainy, typical Oregon in October and November, actually. So we've crossed the threshold. We're into November, and I'm good with it. How are you all doing? I hope your more sober Octobers ended well. Mine did. I achieved my goal of 25 alcohol-free days, and I'm looking forward to a great last 2 months here of the year and really finishing strong and setting myself up for a brilliant dry January. I will be doing the full dry January. You can do it however you'd like to, but that is my goal for January, always is, and I enjoy taking off that full 31 days. And so let's talk about this week, shall we? This episode is dropping on Monday, November 4th, and it's a little bit of a tumultuous time here in the United States. For those of you that are listening elsewhere, you probably are aware of it too. Definitely one day here before the U.S. presidential election. And I know that many of you might be feeling, forgive the pun, a cocktail of stress, worry, and overwhelm. And this episode is really about understanding those feelings, managing them without turning to alcohol or anything else that you might try to buffer them away with, and really embracing your resilience. And a side note too, if you missed it, last week's Think Thursday episode was about deep breathing. And we talked about why it's beneficial. And I shared a simple technique for practicing that could be very useful today, tomorrow, and in the weeks to come. Because let's face it, we're not going to know the outcome tomorrow. Heck, we're going to be lucky if we know the outcome even a month from now. So we better get good at building up this emotional resilience and practicing managing our minds around worry and anxiety. Let's start with a foundational question. What is worry really? We often think of it as being trapped kind of in a cycle of anxious thoughts. But did you know that worry itself is an action? It's not just a passing thought, but an active process that we engage in when our minds feel threatened by uncertainty. Worry is actually a habit that involves repetitive negative thinking, and it's an attempt by your brain to create a sense of control in an uncontrollable situation. Dr. Judd Brewer, who is an expert on anxiety, describes it as a learned behavior reinforced by the temporary sense of doing something productive. And as a side note, I interviewed Dr. Judd way back in episode number 36 of the podcast, all about his book, Unwinding Anxiety. And I will link that episode in the show notes. The paradox with worry is that while our brain tries to comfort us by worrying, this cycle typically leads to more stress and less clarity. So one of the things I want you to understand is that worry is uniquely human. It's that beautiful, logical prefrontal cortex, and that's where really the capability to worry lives. This advanced part of our brain allows us to plan, anticipate, and imagine future scenarios. And really, it's a remarkable thing that you hear me talk about it all the time. This is what makes us uniquely human. And it's a remarkable skill for both survival and problem solving. Our ancient ancestors benefited from this ability to foresee potential dangers. That was a part of the evolution process. And in modern life, though, this can morph into chronic worry when there is no immediate threat. We have that built in our lower brains. It is a part of our evolution, and sometimes it's triggered by things that really aren't, just like fear. It's not a real threat anymore, but we create a threat with our thoughts. Think about it. Our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for complex thinking and planning, is what sets us apart from other species. It's why we can envision future outcomes and develop strategies. However, when it's faced with uncertainties like this upcoming election, that same brain region can shift from constructive planning to an overactive state, imagining all the possible negative outcomes. And this process, which obviously was there to help us prepare for life or death scenarios, then fuels an endless loop of worry. So it's no longer productive. What I want you to remember is that worry doesn't change the future and it doesn't prepare you. In fact, chronic worry often pushes us into a loop that leads to negative coping mechanisms. This might mean turning to alcohol, overeating, compulsively checking social media, shopping, you name it, all in an attempt to distract or buffer or numb ourselves from the feelings and from our thoughts. With the presidential election just one day away, it's natural for many of us to feel a heightened sense of anxiety. The stakes can seem enormous. They're influencing areas of life that we hold dear, like healthcare, education, the economy, or social issues. And this fear of the unknown feeds into what I call the what if cycle, right? It's a relentless mental loop that pulls us away from the present and pulls us into a spiral of worst case scenarios. Another description or another way to describe that is catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is really a significant cognitive distortion. All right. So cognitive distortion means, as the name applies, that it is a distorted way of thinking. It's not actually true. We're using our brain or that logical prefrontal cortex in a way that is not constructive at all. It's when our brain takes a single concern and amplifies it to the most extreme, disastrous outcome possible. For instance, an uncertain election result may trigger thoughts like, if my preferred candidate doesn't win, everything will fall apart. This kind of thinking not only heightens anxiety, but also exacerbates feelings of powerlessness and overwhelm. Catastrophizing often starts more subtly. A legitimate concern morphs into an irrational conviction that disaster is inevitable. Our prefrontal cortex, which helps us plan and foresee potential dangers, can go into overdrive, generating imagined scenarios that compound worry and anxiety. While this type of cognitive distortion might feel protective in some way, as if by imagining the worst, we're kind of preparing for it, it actually depletes our mental resources and leaves us feeling more anxious and actually less capable of managing real challenges. During politically charged times like presidential elections, the tendency to catastrophize can become widespread. We might catch ourselves believing that if the wrong outcome occurs, it could mean irreparable damage to our way of life or personal well-being. It's crucial to recognize this pattern for what it is, an exaggerated response that misuses our brain's natural problem-solving abilities. Consider how catastrophizing like this during an election can lead to overreactions, such as compulsively consuming news or spiraling into arguments, fueling further anxiety. Instead of preparing us to take positive action, it leaves us feeling stuck and overwhelmed. Catastrophizing also ties directly into the illusion of control. We believe that if we worry hard enough or mentally prepare for the worst, we'll somehow control the outcome. But of course, the reality is, in situations like elections, once our votes are cast, the outcome is beyond our influence. Hey there, it's Molly taking a quick break to talk with you about Sunnyside. You all know that Sunnyside is my app of choice and my recommendation for a tool to help you create sustainable change around your drinking. One of the things that I love about Sunnyside is their commitment to improving the user experience, and that has been a constant since I started working with them nearly 3 years ago now. Since June this year, they have added the Android version of their iOS app. So now it's available for Apple users and all Android users. It's the same Sunnyside experience across all of those devices. And it's just another example of their commitment to improving the user experience. Another example would be the fact that now you can set it up for push notifications. So you can take all of the daily texts, the reminders, and put them into a push preference so that you determine how you want to receive the support from Sunnyside. I would love for you to check it out. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started with a 15-day free trial today. I remember during past elections, I'd find myself glued to the news, unable to tear away from updates. Each poll or opinion seemed to either validate my hopes or confirm my worst fears. The result was a surge in stress, not empowerment. I wasn't just information seeking, it was a cycle of catastrophizing when my mind raced with what might happen and what it could mean for my future. Recognizing when you're caught in this pattern is really the first step. Start by challenging the validity of your thoughts. Ask yourself, am I exaggerating this concern? What is the most likely outcome, not the worst case scenario? This simple exercise can disrupt that cognitive distortion and bring your thinking back to reality. Additionally, grounding techniques to anchor ourselves are really useful. When your brain starts spinning out on catastrophic scenarios, pause, do the PB&J, right? Pause, breathe, and redirect your focus to what is happening right now. Use deep breathing, as mentioned, that episode from last Think Thursday. And ask yourself, what else is true? Mindfulness practices can help pull you out of future-focused fear and into the current moment where you actually have control over your thoughts and how you are feeling. Here are some strategies to help really navigate anxiety and worry. First, I want you to practice and create a mindfulness practice. Start by building a habit of these deep breathing exercises. When anxiety hits, take a moment, do the 4, 7, 8 that I talked about in Think Thursday, and really use that to help reset your nervous system. It's a small act with very profound effects on your ability to stay grounded. Acknowledge and name your emotions. Often naming your emotions can reduce their power. When you find yourself overwhelmed by the what ifs, pause and say, I am feeling anxious right now, and that's okay. By identifying what you're experiencing, you validate the emotion and teach your brain that you can handle it. We can allow anxiety to be there, and we don't have to keep fueling it, and we don't have to try to not feel it at all. Number 3, engage in positive distractions. Not all distractions are harmful. If you find your thoughts spiraling, try channeling your energy into activities that stimulate your brain without exacerbating stress. This could be a hobby, a challenging puzzle, calling a friend for a chat, things that are positive and productive distractions. And the last little advice here, limit media consumption. You've heard me talk about before on the podcast. I think if you have somewhere, I don't remember what episode, but I talk about curating your mindset. And part of that is being a mental ninja with regards to what you are allowing in. This is crucial during election times. The 24-hour news cycle thrives on sensationalism, and constant updates can spike your stress levels. So set specific times for checking the news and stick to them. When those times pass, focus on other activities that restore your sense of calm. One of the most important lessons I want to share is that you are resilient. Your brain is wired not just for survival, but for thriving. Anxiety is rooted often in a belief that we can't handle what's coming. But that belief is just really a practiced thought that you've practiced over and over again. And I want you to start changing that. You are capable of experiencing all the highs and lows that life throws at you. The key is shifting from a fear driven mindset to one of trust in that ability to handle it. I can allow all those feelings, the highs, the lows, because that is part of the human experience. It's important to understand that uncertainty is a constant in life, not just during elections. How you choose to respond to uncertainty makes all the difference. Instead of trying to escape or predict the future, practice staying with your present experience. Ask yourself, what's happening right now? Focus on the tangible world around you, not just the stories that your brain might be spinning. Choose connection. Don't isolate yourself in moments of stress. Connection is a powerful way to anchor yourself when anxiety threatens to take over. Talk with friends, join groups where you can share your worries and hear that you're not alone. This shared human experience can remind you of your strength and your resilience. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is going through the minds of many of you as my listeners here on Alcohol Minimalist. With the stress of the election looming, you might be wondering, should I drink on election night? And it's a fair question, and one that speaks directly to the work we do here at Alcohol Minimalists. The answer really lies in your intention and the habits you're trying to build. And here's my take. If you wouldn't normally drink on a Tuesday night, then election night doesn't need to be an exception. Many people use alcohol to buffer emotions, whether it's to ease anxiety or to heighten celebration. On a night like election night, when emotions are running high, this urge might be more pronounced. But here's what I want you to consider. Just because the event feels significant, it doesn't mean it deserves a drink. Drinking in response to intense emotions, whether positive or negative, reinforces that neural pathway between alcohol and emotional regulation. And that is a pathway we want to stop reinforcing. If you're feeling anxious, worried, or uncertain about the results, ask yourself if a drink will truly change those emotions or simply delay dealing with them. They're not going to go away. The same goes for celebrating a perceived victory. While you might feel that raising a glass is the only way to mark a moment, remember that true celebration comes from genuine joy and connection, not from alcohol. For those of you that are not familiar with it, a doable drink plan would be a great idea. It's an intentional approach that helps you make mindful choices about how you drink. And here's a simple way to apply it to election night. Number one, set your intentions early. Decide ahead of time. Decide today if you'll be drinking and why. If your reason is to buffer away anxiety or chase away stress, then I want you to pause and reassess that. Remember, the act of drinking might offer a temporary distraction, but it will not solve the underlying feeling. The only way you can do that is by changing your thoughts. Number two, decide ahead of time if you are going to drink, how much, and what you're going to, what that plan's going to look like. That will help you stay mindless. We're not just deciding that we're going to drink, we're deciding how much we're going to drink, we're deciding what we're going to drink, and we're using our logical prefrontal cortex to do it. We're making a plan that aligns with our long-term goals. We're making a plan that is maybe a small improvement over last week. That's what we're looking for. Number three, remember to engage in alternative coping strategies. Instead of reaching for a drink, try practices that soothe, without negative consequences. Again, those deep breathing exercises, talking to a friend, journaling. These are options. When the reason for drinking feels more celebratory, like a victory for your preferred candidate, it's important to recognize that turning to alcohol as the default way to celebrate still perpetuates a reliance on drinking as the response to emotion. Again, it doesn't always have to be negative emotion. It can be positive, celebratory. And we want to lessen that connection between drinking and emotional responses. True celebration doesn't need to involve alcohol. You can dance, you can call friends, you can mark the occasion with your favorite non-alcoholic treat. Before the results come in, take a moment to ask yourself, if I weren't experiencing this event, would I be drinking tonight? If the answer is no, then it's worth considering what's motivating your choice. Remember, election night may feel monumental, but your commitment to your well-being and building a peaceful relationship with alcohol is ongoing and hopefully for the rest of your life. Ultimately, whether you choose to drink or not on election night is up to you, but doing so with mindfulness and intention can make all the difference. If your usual routine doesn't involve drinking on weeknights, then let this Tuesday night be no different. Align your actions with your long-term goals and with those values that really align with being an alcohol minimalist. You deserve to face this event and any outcome from it with clarity, with resilience, and with the confidence that you can handle it, just as you are. I hope these tools empower you to move through uncertainty with more peace and with less need for numbing from the feelings of anxiety and worry. And remember, worry is a habit that you've probably built over time, and you can work to change that as well. You have the power to face life's uncertainties with courage and resilience. I hope that you found this episode helpful. I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear these words. And I hope that whoever you are voting for, I hope that you can remember to stay grounded, stay hopeful, and choose peace always. Until next time, my friends, take care, and I will see you. Hey, thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 3 ways. You can learn about them over at www.mollywatts.com/workwithme. Or better yet, reach out to me directly. It's molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and discuss what's best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going.